Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Nacho Tuesday. And today I have Rich here with Aquifer CFO, and would love to learn more about your guys' company and what you guys do over there.
Perfect. Thanks for having me. Aquifer CFO is a plug-in finance department for startups and small businesses, where typically that solution you'll need somewhere after a bookkeeper, but before having a full-time CFO or a full-time finance department. We think that where's that cost-effective solution, but we're also very capable, and it saves you a lot of time in terms of hiring and interviewing and also managing staff altogether.
Great. I guess, how did you get started in a career? What led you to starting this company?
Funny enough, I was a CFO at a major fintech company. Eventually it grew to 280 people. I was the 26th hire. When I was hired up until even the 80th staff headcount, I was a one-man team.
Oh, wow.
And it's a common phenomenon. I still don't know why, but startups and small businesses neglect the finance department. The finance department is one of the most undercapitalized department out of all company departments out there. You'll have a lot of headcount in marketing, you have a lot of headcount in tech. You don't have many people in finance. You probably, at best, you have one full-time in finance. And I'm not sure why, but that's what the phenomenon is. The issue is we are a cost center and no one wants to invest in that department. So I came up with this solution where we can be cheap, but also capable at the same time. And so that's how it really grew into a business. At first, it was basically starting part-time gigs for a few founders that needed help with the financials. And then that evolved into, actual business.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to say, a lot of people love building product and investing in sales. People like more money, but we're building a financial business here. So if you want your business to be successful, it needs to be successful financially. And, that starts from day one, really. So some of the best companies are the best companies are always financially driven. So it's important to invest in that early on. And I do see that as a common occurrence as well, too. Like you mentioned, a lot of people skip out on the finance and try to go raise money, for instance, and their books are just completely just cooked. And, they're not able to get to the next step or identify cost centers and where they can cut certain expenses, before they run out of runway and actually get to that next round.
Totally. I think, that actually fueled our business growth. Over the last few years, the venture capital startup world has changed drastically. Back in 2016, I think that was like the height of the startup venture capital industry, is that you could raise a couple $1,000,000 at a coffee shop with napkin math.
Yep.
And then now, people want to see your numbers, right? They want to see your runway. They want to see that you actually have a plan. You actually have a budget. And it's not just about raising capital and burning it on meta ads and growing top line, but also growing sustainably, right? We've looked at, Uber. We looked at WeWork. That story doesn't, work anymore. If you're not breaking even by the 100,000th car or 1,000 locations, there's something fundamentally wrong with your financial situation. It's got nothing to do with the scale or growth that was commonly used as the go-to story by founders when they're talking to investors.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that time and again. Yeah, you used to be able to raise money for like a social media app that with no users, just with a pitch deck back in the day. But yeah, now it's all financially driven. Investors want to see that you're financially competent, number one. Two, that you have a plan financially to be able to grow the business, and that it's actually going to be profitable at some point, hopefully sooner than later.
Right, totally.
I guess, in your opinion, what are the reasons cause startups to fail? Obviously, I think death by a thousand cuts financially does it. Anything else that you see, especially from a financial standpoint?
I think a lot of founders are looking at the top line, and that's it. You could be revenue rich but cash poor. It's a common saying. Part of the reason is probably they don't have good accounting or financial reporting capabilities. So they're relying on top line metrics that maybe they're getting from their Shopify store, Amazon FBA store, or their POS terminal. So that gives them the revenue, but it's nothing to do with how much cash do you have, right? It could take, 30, 60, 90 days to get that revenue converted to cash. But at the same time, you also have, ad spend that you're continuing to fuel the company. You have G&A costs.
Yeah.
So a lot of founders, and I've seen some of my clients go broke in the last, 18 months in this struggling market, that they're doing fine revenue wise, but they ran out of cash and they couldn't get a loan product, credit product out there that could bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to pay attention to the cash, but you're not going to be able to really understand your cash position if you don't have up-to-date financial accounting works done, because to get that cash number, you kind of need to adjust a lot of these receivables and payables that's going on in your business almost every minute.
Yeah, cash flow is king when you're trying to operate a company, because, like, for instance, if you're carrying inventory, you might be laying out a bunch of capital up front, but you're not going to be able to sell that inventory for many months, right? And then a lot of companies, I guess if we're talking about e-commerce in this case, but every business has its own financial, like dark spots, right? Churn
Yeah.
rate, SaaS companies. If you're e-commerce, for instance, you might have like a return rate maybe from a store that you work with. And a lot of people don't want to account for that actually, but you might actually find that doing business with a retailer or partner, you're actually losing money on it, not even actually making money on it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the second part. I mean, it's not as prevalent as the first, but the second reason is, like you said, a few years down the line, they find out, hey, like, if I added the attributed ad spend to that product per unit sold, I'm actually at a net loss,
Yeah.
right? And they only find out maybe later. And that's even worse, because then the question is, should you stay in this business or not?
Yep. Yeah. If it costs more to sell the product, what are you even doing? That's a great example too. A lot of people don't properly account for the ad spend, whether there's a positive ROI to it, only to come to realize that you never have a path to be a profitable business.
Totally, and it's getting tougher to grab people's attention. Like if you look at a lot of the e-commerce businesses, and or even just a regular, startup mobile apps, we're all targeting the 19 to 39-year-old, the community, right? And we're basically hitting the same segment of people with impressions all day long. So you're fighting against all the other brands, all the other companies for that attention on their news feed, right? And so your CAC is just going to get, higher and higher. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that you need to understand that your startup idea most likely is not unique.
Yeah.
So it most likely is not going to go viral. Whatever idea you have, there's probably 10 copies of that somewhere else. And
Yeah.
you're just fighting over the same pool of people.
Yep. Yeah. So that's why it's really important to financially manage your company well. Then also, after you acquire the customer, a lot of people, you might skimp out on, the customer relations and keeping them up to date too, because it's more important to keep a customer once you get them than to try to acquire a new customer. I mean, they'll have a lot higher LTV, and then also, they can become a net promoter for your business as well too, right? So I think that's kind of the game going forward, is how do you build a community around your customers by having a great experience that goes along with whatever product that you're selling.
Totally.
And I guess, what other good tips can you offer startups to keep their finances in order, so that they don't come across this point where they realize, a year or two down the line, that their business model doesn't even work?
I tell people, once you hit 1 million ARR, you got to get better help on the accounting. You can't just do this semi-annual or annual, accounting file thing. That was fine when you were under 1 million bucks. You meet your accountant at end of year before the holidays and he files it. Great, but that doesn't work once you go past 1 million. You almost need a day-to-day, week-by-week live dashboard, or at least some sort of metric that is constantly being reported to you on an ongoing basis. And it depends on sector, right? If you're in e-commerce and in retail, it's like you said, a lot of the money is tied in inventory. So you need to look at your working capital, right? And then if you're in other industries, that, for example, crypto, you need to really understand, your risk is like how much of that inventory is actually not liquidated. What are the margins and spread, what's going on in the market. So it's very, very different per sector, but ultimately you need that ongoing monitoring system once you get past that $1 million. And it's very key to not linger. That's probably the best advice I could give people.
Yep, absolutely. I guess what tips would you have for companies to save money on their day-to-day operations, especially in the startup period?
I think, day-to-day operations, whether you're getting a bookkeeper or getting, a CPA or getting a whole department up, what's important is you learn how to organize your financials. And one of the easiest way is, you can have segregated bank accounts, right? What bank account you use for, G&A is different from the bank account you use to take in orders from your Shopify store. So just those segregated, easy things to do can really help whatever, accounting talent you've hired to do the books. And it also helps yourself as well. Maybe your accountant is not as fast as closing the month end. It's okay. You can go into the bank account. You understand that this bank account has to do with, your client funds or your sales, rather than, some other pool of money. So just simple things you could have done to really make your life much easier.
Yep. And a lot of times it's the integrations, like you said, getting those integrations set up early and often so they're feeding data into one source. So if you have sales coming in from Shopify, there's integrations into QuickBooks and other apps where you could just, have that data coming in at all times. Just set it up once and you got it done. You check the box rather than trying to have to go back later and, redo everything, which is actually a lot more work.
Totally. If that software has an integration with one of the general ledgers, which is like you're either using QuickBooks Online or Xero in this world, use that software. If it has an integration, it's going to make your bookkeeping process much easier. But even if you don't have a bookkeeper and you want to kind of do it yourself because, revenue is still a bit sparse, it's going to make your life easier as well.
Yep, absolutely. And we have discounts on those two products for anybody listening, QuickBooks and Xero as well. So I guess when should a SaaS company consider bringing in an outsourced
CFO? Anywhere past $1 million, I think you should get a outsourced CFO and a plug-in finance department, which is what our service offering is. It's quite different from what's out there, where you have a fractional CFO that's great at strategy, but the issue is, well, who's going to do the work, top down, right? So with our plug-in finance department service, we provide bookkeeping, month-end close, tax prep, FP&A, customized reporting, as well as fractional CFO advisory. We even help startups raise money by sitting in most of the venture capital financing meetings. And we also even provide corporate board document support.
Yep. And that's really key too. Somebody's got to do the tactical work, and the strategy really helps as well, because a CFO minded person, especially if they're fractional, they're affordable, number one. But two, they could provide you the most important strategic level of decision making that your company can need for, how to maybe approach investors, how to set up your financial strategy. Maybe it doesn't require, a bunch of hours on a day-to-day basis, but, just having that person in the room, accessible is really, really important to make sure that you're steering in the right direction financially for your company. And then, of course, it's great that you guys have your bookkeepers and all of your tactical employees and support people to kind of help keep the processes going so the books are up to date.
Yeah, one-stop shop. You just have to talk to, one of us, and we know the whole story with your company. And if you need any added on service, you don't have to go out there and hire that talent. We have it most likely internally, because we service currently, north of 70 startups actively right now. We've serviced, hundreds before. So we definitely know what we're doing.
Excellent. So you guys said you get involved in fundraising. I guess, what are you guys seeing in the venture environment now? What fundraising tips would you offer for startups if they're trying to get geared up for it?
Yeah, so part of our fundraising support work includes obviously, finishing the financials, closing that month end, and creating that data bank. So data bank, obviously, as you know, is a collection of folders that includes the, incorporation documents to cap table, to the financial statements, to any other supplementary documents for investors to look at to really help them finalize their decision on whether to invest or not. So we help prepare that data bank. On top of that, what we've seen as a major issue in the financing stage is that investors are arriving to the meeting before the company has finalized their financials yet.
Oh, wow.
So you have investors are just waiting there like sitting ducks for numbers, and it doesn't really look good on a lot of our prospect clients or clients, the new clients, when they don't have numbers ready for the investors to look at. Most of the time when we start an engagement, we're pulled into that investor stage right away, which is not good. And we have to obviously take the time to fix what the previous guy didn't do, or did do, but not right. And at the same time, we have investors are asking us, why is it taking so long to get the numbers to them? The other issue is not having a robust financial reporting routine or system that allows the company to close the books within like business day 10. And the issue with that is a lot of people say, well, I already have the latest quarter close. Like, what's the big deal? The problem is a lot of investors these days, they want to see the latest few months. So if let's say, for example, right now we started talking to investors, it's November. They're going to want to see November month closed. They're not going to send that wire or signed term sheet until January. So they want to see November, they want to see December, and you never know, they might want to see January as well. And a lot of my clients underestimate that. They think the last 6 months in arrears was enough. And then they start struggling, getting the books to them for the ongoing months. And that's when it really turns off the investors. It depends on what type of investors, obviously, but it does turn them off. Like, hey, are these numbers even real if you're struggling so much to present them to us?
Yeah, it creates a trust issue potentially, and also just makes you look disorganized, right? If you're not coming there with the numbers ready to go right out of the gate, it's gonna, worst case scenario, best case scenario, it's just gonna increase the time to close the deal, and even time kills deals, right? But even worse, it makes you look like you're incompetent. You don't know what you're doing. Investors, they don't necessarily care about the features or what your company does as much as you do. They care, is it a viable business model that can make money? And so, being able to show that it can make money with your financial statements and then projections going forward to where you think you can be over the next few months, they want to ride this thing up that's already on a upward trajectory, right? They don't want to invest in a floundering business. So the better you could communicate that story, which is what they care about, the more likely you are to raise money.
Exactly.
Great. So I guess, how do you see technology playing into financial management? We talked about a couple great tools like QuickBooks. We talked about Xero as another example. Is there any that you guys in particular like to work with or recommend for other people?
Well, there's a lot of great integration softwares now. Even payroll, a lot of it, like US would be Gusto. Here in Canada, we use a lot of WagePoint for clients. All of them integrate with the general ledgers. I think a lot of companies still lack the dashboard. There's a few dashboard companies that are coming up right now that say they can replace Excel. I think they make the grunt work of creating a dashboard on Excel much more manageable. So that has been a software sector that we've been exploring to really get our clients up to date with financials. So they don't have to wait for an email from us highlighting last month's P&L or going to a folder. They can actually just have this live link on one of their shortcut homepage bookmarks. And immediately they got graphs, they got the summary that they need, especially for CEO and founders. They don't really need to go into all the nitty gritty. They just kind of need to know the important metrics for their industry.
Yeah, just get a pulse for it. We use Superset, for instance, as a way to visualize data. Some of
Yeah,
it financial, some of it user data, engagement data, all that kind of stuff.
exactly. There's like, data rails, there's Fathom, there's like LiveFlow, there's a few players, we've been experimenting to see which one would fit with which client. Really depends by use case.
Yep, absolutely. So I guess what's one thing you want potential customers to know about Aquifer CFO, and why should they pick your service up today?
Yeah, we're very good at keeping the accounting very clean. We've been, growing 90% through referral. We've been, invited to the engagement simply because our clients were in a crisis mode, and whoever they hired previously, wasn't up to par. And I think what we are is almost like a startup veteran. We're very used to the tempo. We're very used to the messiness. We're also very good at engaging with founders. And a lot of accountants out there are trained too traditional for the startup world. I think what they do is fine if you're working with blue chip companies, if these companies have a counterpart finance department in-house that speaks your language, that's great. But startups are a totally different beast. And not everyone can handle that kind of culture, that fast-paced culture, that disorganization, putting out fires. You really need to be an assertive team of finance and accounting professionals to get the job done right.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I've been working with startups for almost 20 years now, and it's just a different animal, like you said. It's they do tend to be disorganized. They're early stage. They don't have huge budgets. And I think the way you guys approach your business model and the way you set it up is that you can grow. You can start small with the most important things that every business needs, and then you can grow together with the business and ultimately offer more services as they need them as they grow. But yeah, a lot of startups just simply just they neglect the finance side, unfortunately, and it's good that they have companies like you guys there for that. So I
Do our
guess
best.
yep, exactly. So what's next for you guys over the next 5 years?
I mean, we love to really expand in the startup field. We're already, diversified in almost every startup sector. Um, I think what we would love to get in the next 5 years is some sort of partnership with a lot of the big household venture capital firms out there. A lot of times I talk to venture capital partners offline and they say, we have like 30 portfolio companies, but I just feel like every time they report their numbers, something's not making sense. And, every board meeting is too long for them to really understand what's going on. And yet they still don't have the details. And then, at the same time, they know that founders are also very stressed and stretched very thin. So they're really trying to find that solution. So we've had some referrals from venture capital firms for their current portfolio companies, or even companies they're looking to possibly invest. They've referred us to kind of go in, clean up the books, report what's truly there, and then get back to the VC and hopefully continue the conversation. Too often does this happen, and too often do we see like these great companies lose out on an investment deal simply because the founders, like you said, neglected financial reporting, right? And I like to really help VCs out too. And it's not easy to invest tens and hundreds of $1 million on a company, on a young 20 to 30-year-old kid, and hope they know how to report these metrics to you.
Yeah.
Right, and hope they don't blow it up out of proportion. So, I'm hopeful that we can really get some sort of blockbuster partnership in the next 5 years and help many more startups.
Well, let us know. Yeah, we work with a lot of VCs ourselves too, so I guess we could take that offline. But happy to make some direct introductions there. Aquifer is a great partner of ours with the NachoNacho B2B SaaS and services marketplace. You can learn about them there, or you can go to their website. Your website is aquifercfo.com. Do you want to?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's aquifercfo.com. You can learn about their services there. I would also recommend that you definitely look it up today if you don't have your finances in order, because like Rich mentioned, if you're coming to them too late when you're actually trying to raise money and you're actually talking to investors, it's probably too late and you're probably going to blow up the deal. So, make sure that you solve that problem and get ahead of it today and actually reach out to them and see what you can learn about their services. Great. And Rich, thanks so much for coming on today. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and we look forward to our continued partnership.
Hey, my pleasure, Andy.
You too.
Talk soon.